Welcome to VPG's Virtual Water Cooler Chat podcast, a platform that features professionals across a variety of industries and promotes growth mindset principles with a central pillar of championing the achievements of women. Our conversations explore a wide spectrum of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, creating a vibrant mosaic that enriches our collective understanding and strengthens our commitment to growth and empowerment. On our final episode of Season 3 of Virtual Water Cooler Chat, join VPG founder Ashley Chung from a podcasting studio at 20,000 Leagues as she speaks with Connor Houghton, a partner at Reichman, Jorgensen, Lehman, and Feldberg, while an aquarium of sea creatures swim past behind them. Connor's practice is focused on intellectual property and commercial litigation in a wide variety of technologies and sectors, including in cases before federal district and appellate courts, the International Trade Commission, and the United States Patent and Trademark Office. His experience includes participating in all phases of litigation, managing filing and defending inter partes review proceedings, and briefing complex issues before district courts and the federal circuit. Let's get started.
Hey, Connor, how are you doing? Thank you so much for saying yes to be on the virtual water cooler chat.
Hey, Ashley, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, such exciting day ahead of you, don't you?
Yep.
So, to get started, you and I work together at Finnegan. It's been a few years, but we've worked on projects on and off. I have never really had a chance to talk to you about how you get started to become a patent attorney. You want to start from there?
Yeah, sure. I did a chemistry degree in undergrad. So while I was doing that, I was interested in the chemistry and interested in the science, but I found pretty quickly that I didn't really like the hands-on lab work that was involved with it. I thought it was interesting and cool, but it wasn't something I could see wanting to do long-term. So I sort of was looking for other things that I could do while maintaining that degree and that background. And one of the things that came up was potentially doing something related to patent law. At the time I was working in a pharmaceutical drug discovery role as an undergrad researcher. And my professor was an expert witness in a bunch of patent cases. And so he told me about how that went and how it was pretty interesting and to kind of look into that. So I did, and it seemed like something that would be pretty fun and interesting, and I'd get to sort of stay on the same path I was on then, but have a different outlook on where things would go. And so that's kind of how I got to where I ended up. Was I stuck with the chemistry degree, and then when I was looking to go to law school all along, and so I went straight into that after I graduated.
Do you have anyone in your family besides, what your academic journey leads you to, law?
My cousin is also a lawyer. He and I are similar age, though he's 1 or 2 years ahead of me. So he had started law school a year or two before I did, but he and I were in undergrad together also in Boston. And so we were both sort of looking into it at the same time. But other than that, there's nobody sort of above us in our family who was in law.
Are you in the Boston area, or where do you grow up like as a kid?
I grew up in New Hampshire, which is where I live now again. So I grew up here, and then I went to college in Boston. And then I moved down to DC for part of law school. And then again, when I graduated. And then during COVID, we moved back to New Hampshire. Kind of came
during
full
COVID,
circle.
A lot of people actually moved back to a lot of places.
Yep.
Do you enjoy what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely some days are better than others, but I'm sure that's the same for everything. I think most of the things that are, I really like the long-term aspects of this and like working towards kind of the resolution of our cases one way or another. It's a grind some days, but we get through it and we move on to the kind of more exciting things.
It's actually really interesting, the fact that you had a professor that sort of introduced you to the patent law area. Because most of the people that I've actually interviewed, or I had like my team interviewed, a lot of people do not have lawyers in sort of like their immediate proximity. So it's kind of cool that you have a professor that was an expert witness. That's the first. And I know that you went to Harvard for law school. Was that pretty much just because it's Massachusetts, or what were you thinking? Because there are people that actually talk about you have to go to the top school. And there's also different people that talk about that, oh no, you just need to be really good and sort of like top percentile of your class. What was your thought behind what school to choose from?
I actually started at GW Law School. So I went there for my first year. And then from there, I transferred for my second 2 years. And part of it was wanting to be closer to home. And part of it was just sort of, like you said, the name recognition of it can open up some more opportunities. So it was a combination of both of those things. But I got my job at Finnegan after my first year at GW. So I think either way, probably would have ended up at the same place that I ended up at. But, I liked both places and learned a lot.
You have a technical background, so you're in STEM. Going into law school, you already knew that you were going to go into patent law, right?
Yeah, that was sort of my idea. I wasn't sure if I was going to do more on the patent prosecution side or the patent litigation side, but I knew I wanted to do something related to patents.
So I love this. This is a great segue in a sense, a transition into the next question, is that you've done both patent prosecution and patent litigation. How does each aspect sort of help you with your current career and journey?
Yeah, so I never really ended up doing any prosecution. We had some training at Finnegan about it, and so I sort of knew what was going on, but I never ended up doing that work. I sort of got straight into litigation. Apart from I have been involved in quite a few IPRs now, which are sort of a little bit of a crossover between the two. I've talked to a lot of people who did prosecution who were patent examiners before they went to law school and things like that. And I think there's definitely some advantages to knowing what goes on in that world and seeing how patents get to where they are before they get into litigation years later.
Yeah, especially because you and I work mostly on IPR and PGR, I think, in firms. And I think that when I was at Finnegan, I have never done any ex parte re-exam. But when I came out to start my own company, that's what I had to end up learning, because if you don't do that, you lose the other side of the business. Just in case when people are asking you, do you know how to do this? Well, I can now say that I've done a lot. So I think that is really interesting in terms of finding a niche. If you have to say, what would be your niche in your practice?
It's interesting because we do a lot of different things in our firm. Like we have, a fairly big group of IPR proceedings that we're working on now, most of which aren't standalone things that we took on, but they come out of the district court or ITC cases that we file. And then the patents get challenged. And so we end up working on both sides. And then we also work on appeals from some of the district court cases we have. I think I have seen a lot of different things, and I don't know that I necessarily focus on one or the other, but I like having a practice that gets involved in all these different areas instead of focusing on just one thing, because I think it keeps things exciting and interesting and not too repetitive.
One thing that I definitely need to congratulate you is that you have become a partner at Reichman Jorgensen. So congratulations.
Thank you.
How does your responsibility evolve from, being an associate to a partner, or does it even change in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's more gradual. It's not like you flip a switch one day and you change your title and you immediately have different things you're supposed to be doing. I think you kind of work your way up along the way as an associate. And then by the time you get to that point, you don't notice a switch overnight and you just sort of continue to get a little bit more responsibility as the time goes on. And I'd say that's
you just wear more hats.
Yeah, definitely wear more hats. You have a few more things going on, but it's not like an overnight switch. It's sort of much more gradual.
What do you enjoy the most in terms of your new role now, as a partner?
I like sort of having a bit more responsibility for more people and getting to work with more people. And instead of you being the one sort of always doing the day-to-day work on everything, now there's a bit more of a chance to let someone else be in that position and you just sort of help provide guidance and review and advice and things like that. And it lets you work on a few more things at once because you don't have to spend as much time on every individual task, but you're still seeing the same cases go from start to finish, but you see a few more of them and you have a little bit of a different position on those cases.
I see. What is your day-to-day? I know that it varies so much because, for example, most of the time I kind of sit in my basement and then I'll just do my bit. I know. And then, but today I have a couple of meetings, and in between I have this podcast interview, and then I have to go to a CHIPS event at 5:30. So I was actually getting on Metro and trying to figure out, okay, where am I going to stop? Will I be able to make it to Foggy bikini bottom where your, GW is? And if yes, where am I going to find a place that is quiet enough for me to take a podcast? And then somehow in between, I was like, I think I need to get off at Reston Station and then find a good place. And this is where I end up. Not
It's a
too
good
shabby,
background.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, definitely a different background. So I think that's one of the things that is really interesting. And sometimes it's like mission impossible because like one day I was invited to go to LinkedIn headquarters to be one of the focus group sort of subject, I guess, in New York. And I missed my train because it was so early in the morning. My lift never came. I ended up driving at 4 a.m. in the morning to Union Station and then get on the next train. And I got 20 minutes from like Penn Station to run over to Empire State Building. So that was like literally mission impossible. By the time that I got there, I was like, don't talk to me right now. Let me just breathe. So I think my day-to-day is very different. What is your day-to-day like?
My day-to-day work, I think, changes so much depending on what stage of these cases we're at. Next Tuesday, I have oral arguments in a PTAB hearing.
Yep.
And so that's going to be a busy day. But, some days I'm working on discovery emails and reviewing documents and writing letters. And then, the same day I might be working on writing a brief and thinking about the strategy for an appeal. So there's a lot of variation in that. My day-to-day interacts with my home life a lot, sort of like what you were saying, trying to get from A to B and get my 3-year-old son to school and help out with the dog and all that stuff. So it's a busy life.
Oh my God, he's 3 years old now.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about the little one. What is his personality like? Is it more like you or your wife?
He has a lot of energy and he has a lot to say and he's always doing something. Keeping up with him is, a full-time job for my wife and probably a part-time job for me.
What kind of dog do you have then?
He's a little mini Labradoodle. He's sitting behind me on the couch right now. But
okay.
He also has a lot of energy and a lot to say. So
you want to listen into this podcast.
Yep.
That's awesome. So you have done, even when I was working with you at Finnegan before, you have done a lot more ITC cases before, and we've only done a little bit of IPRs together. Now, based on your experience working on both, or even district court, how do the managing of the different type of cases differ, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely different. The IPRs have a much more set timeline and set of guidelines and rules and things that you can do and can't do. So in some ways, it's easier to kind of figure out what you need to do and on what schedule there. There's a lot less flexibility, I think, which makes it good and bad, I think. But it's a little bit easier to manage because you know what to expect. Whereas, in a district court case or an ITC case, you're waiting for the judge to do something a lot of times. And then when it happens, you got to react very quickly. So you can have your case schedule, but things get thrown off a lot more frequently there and you have to kind of adjust on the fly.
And then it's not as much discovery too. Because one of the things, because I was in litigation up until AIA actually was, started, the proceedings started, I was happy in district court and I did only some ITC cases, but, I was mostly in district court cases and the discovery is just like overwhelming and deadlines are overwhelming. So how do you not get tired?
Well, you definitely do get tired. I think having a good group of people you're working on these things with is really important. It's one of the things that we like about our firm the best is we really are very careful in hiring and we're careful with getting good people here that we like to work with and that we talk to on a daily basis and work through some of these really difficult times on the cases. So
yes. And during season 1, I actually interviewed Quay and she's awesome. And every time when I go to New York, well, not every time, but many times when I went to New York, sometimes I would have coffee with her. And one time I went up to your New York office and then she ordered pizza for me and then we had lunch with Jaime and that was really awesome. And I haven't actually been to the DC office and I know people there. Sometimes I ended up going to the remote office and not necessarily the DC office. I thought it was interesting. Let's talk about, given the rapidly evolving technology in especially AI, how do you stay up to date with the new tech that is relevant to your case?
Yeah, it's something we think about a lot and we talk about a lot. lot. I don't think there's a real great answer. You just have to kind of see how things are working for you and try them out. So we've tried a lot of different tools and we've thought about a lot of different ways to use them. And we're still kind of working through that. It's funny because there's a lot of rapidly evolving things in our line of work. Like there's the actual technology that we're litigating about. There's the technology we can use to make the work we do more efficient. And then there's also just sort of the law that is always changing. I mean, we've seen in the PTAB cases recently, there's been a lot of new law coming out about institution and what factors they're going to look at, things like that. And so keeping up with all of this stuff is sort of its own part of the job. It takes a long time. And it's another thing that I think having a good group of people around you to keep up with stuff, like one person can't keep up with everything. And so, having different people looking at different things and sharing ideas and thoughts is very helpful on that front.
Let's talk about work culture a little bit. The legal ecosystem actually consists of professionals, not only attorneys. And I know that your firm actually value, especially your paralegals, people that we both know. Can you kind of share why is that important, in your opinion, to integrate non-attorneys in the legal ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that you have to do to make a lawsuit go well on either side. And many of them have nothing to do with the legal work. They have to do with your getting the stuff you need from your client and maintaining that relationship and filing papers and keeping things organized on your own systems. And, a lot of that work is not the stuff that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. The stuff our staff and our support people are doing more behind the scenes. Having worked at a few different types of places now, I can say that without that, especially when you get close to trial, like without the people doing all that work, there's no way that you could do what we do, because there's so many things behind the scene you don't even know are happening until one day one of them isn't done because somebody was gone and you're like, wow, I didn't even realize that was something someone did.
Yeah, exactly. I think part of it is for example, there's so many things that go into, for example, filing. I do filing support for clients. And a lot of time I have become a lot more choosy, and I've actually gotten off calls from people that ask me, now that the IPR and the PGR scenes actually changes, do you expect your workload to decrease? Do you think that you can take on additional workload? And I'm like, I'm not sure yet because it hasn't happened. And I think that it's really important to find the right people, client or otherwise, to make sure that, I think a lot of it is just based on trust. You have to trust your people and vice versa. Do you want to talk about the trust factor in leadership? And it's now that you are a partner, and there's a lot more things that go into to making sure that the litigation or whatever projects that you're planning that goes well. How do you ensure that you have a trusting team?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes through just your experience with people, and you work with people on cases and you can pretty quickly tell how good they are and at what they're doing, and whether there are certain things that they're really good at and certain things that they need, more help and support on. And so figuring out who's good at what, and then continuing to develop people on those skills that they are really good at. Once you know someone can do something, then you just let them do it. You don't need to look over their shoulder and second guess everything, but you also have to make sure that they can do it before you get there. And so it's a little bit of trial and error. Once you know that people are able to do these tasks that they need to do and they're doing them well, then you just let them kind of run with it.
I think that is so true. For example, now I have actually a lot more younger generation that is integrated onto my team. They don't necessarily all do very few actually do the paralegal work. So I have two groups basically from the team that actually people that are much more creative. So they could do video editing, and they're other artists, what I would call them. And they'll go a different route. And so I would actually give them certain type of assignments, and that would help build their portfolio. Artists, they need their portfolio and to sort of get to the next step. So that's what I've been doing at BPG. And then the other part are actually people that are interested in going to law school, but not quite sure and wanted to get their feet wet before they go to law school. And I've actually been really fortunate, because I know a lot of attorneys, I've been in the field for a long time. So sometimes even my past attorneys would be like, hey, I have this mentee that would like to get some exposure to work. You want some cheap labor? I said, hey, cheap, man. And they're usually from good school, very smart, and And people are actually, through word of mouth, I actually get quite a few people. People was like, how many people do you have? I'm like, a lot, but they don't really work full time because I don't generally work full time in that sense. I thought that one of the things is really interesting is taking feedback and giving feedback. So I wonder if you would be able to talk about, how you handle giving and also taking feedback.
It's a good question. It's something that we think about a lot here. I think it's really important to have that be a part of what you do, because the only way people are going to get better is if you help them get better. You can't just expect people to do things and then suddenly realize that they should have done something differently if you never tell them. That's something that I try to do on like a real-time basis as much as I can, rather than just take something somebody else did and change it and send it off and be done. I try and make sure to explain what it is that I'm changing and why. If there's a more global comment, like next time, try doing it this way, to do that at the time and not wait, 6 months until it's too late to remember what it even was that you were talking about.
In terms of receiving feedback, because I've actually, this one is fun, I have actually had younger people that really giving me critical feedback. And I don't know that it was really fair either, but that's how they feel because the values are so much different. I'm a Gen X. So Gen Z sometimes it was like, hey, I need to talk to you. And then I was like, okay. And it's almost like I am being reprimanded. And then you have to kind of step back. It's really hard to have that particular type of conversation because you want to really handle with some delicacy and you don't hurt their feelings. You have to be sensitive. But at the same time, if they come back and it's like, no, I don't want to do this on this day, I'm like, you do realize this is a job, right? I think that's one of the conversations that I have actually been struggling with a lot. I've actually gotten a lot better and I don't tiptoe as much as I used to. I used to like tiptoe so much because I was such a people pleaser. I didn't want people not to like me. So I'm like, I don't know how to say this. So I just keep saying yes. When I came out and started doing like my own company, I cannot keep saying yes because it would get me into serious trouble. If you accept a client that you haven't like filtered through the necessary thing, you could potentially get yourself into a lot of liability for a business. And then with, the team, sometimes if you keep saying yes to people, then you could potentially either do everything on your own, which defeat the whole purpose of having a team. And telling them, one of this coach, his name is Mark Green, he already was like, oh, you did this because you had a negative past experience, blah, blah, blah. And then after that, he recommended me to read this book from Kim Scott. She has a whole series of books. It's like Radical Candor, but I don't know that we can really do radical candor in the legal space in avoidance of potential lawsuits. So I thought that was a really interesting transition in terms of management versus leadership style. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, I try to be as direct as I can. I think anybody who knows me would agree with that. I don't really tiptoe around things, but I also do understand that like people are learning and not everybody is going to know what they're supposed to be doing. It's not like people are doing things wrong on purpose most of the time. They just don't know better. Like I said before, doing things in real time and not letting it sort of simmer and wait until some formal process to come around like 6 months later to give feedback on what things we should be working on differently and what things might need to be fixed or done better next time. I try to have those get past that feedback along as soon as possible and not wait. Doing it that way and making it sort of an encouragement to take the feedback and, work on it and do it better next time is a way to get people to not see it as like a criticism, but more as like guidelines and advice for moving your career forward.
I like the fact that you said that you're direct. Have you ever heard of a term called compliment sandwich?
No.
So this is how it goes. Compliment sandwich is like you say something good and your criticism is hidden in the sandwich. That's the meat. And then you say something good again. That is usually something that people do not want to in the leadership realm and coaching. That's something that they don't recommend us do. And because people will be so confused, it's like, am I good or am I bad? What do you want me to take away with? So I think that's something that I've actually learned as I was like having a lot of more chance to like read and listen to podcasts. And that's a term that I picked up and I actually integrated in my book. Actually recently published the latest book, The Leadership Catalyst, Igniting Inspired Change. And I've also done like podcasts now. So that has been really, really inspiring inspiring and really a lot of fun. And like tomorrow, for example, well, yesterday, we actually did a virtual workshop that is on personal branding. And I kind of wanted to pick your brain on what your thought is personal branding, if you know anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about marketing and personal branding and using LinkedIn and things like that a lot to kind of get your profile out there. I think it's important, not just to get your own brand out there, but for us to get the kind of collective firm brand out there and then get people interested in our firm as a whole. And then from there, talk to the individual people like me and anyone else. And I think in my position, that's sort of the best way to get personal branding is to use the kind of people behind me at the firm who have really got the accolades and the experience with, all these big things that catch the headlines and use that to say, I worked on that too, or like I can do a similar thing. That's how I plan to approach it.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of debate about what is personal branding with a human being, with our products. We cannot just brand ourselves like just do it, like Nike.
Right.
But it's really just about your reputation, your professional and personal reputation. I wonder, and there are a lot of people against it, actually, because it's almost like vanity. For lawyers, a lot of time, there's a lot of rules against limiting like advertising. So I wonder how does that actually work? But definitely is different from marketing. And that's what we decided to do. And I have known a lot of people that are in the IP space because I've been in the space for almost 2 decades. Part of it is like, except for the people that are like the top rainmakers at the firm that, firm will spend all this money to promote them and they'll have the people that help them to promote themselves. But I think sometimes with people that have less resources within different firms, and also if they kind of see this as a self-promotion and then they're more introvert, it's very difficult to get the name out. And I just thought that it was interesting to be able to put in a position where I can actually help other legal professionals and paralegals and different IP professionals to sort of learn about that concept. And we had some people that actually asked really good questions yesterday. So I really was very thrilled about that. And then in terms of like, the podcast tomorrow, I'm doing an IP Talk Brand Insights with 2 brand strategists and a senior IP advisor from Sephora. We cannot talk about Sephora though for company policy, but we're going to talk a lot about different things. And all of those, people was like, how do you know all these people? I was like, I just emailed them on LinkedIn and they respond. I mean, sometimes they won't respond. Sometimes I appreciate when they say, no, I'm not interested. Then I just don't bother. But sometimes people are like, I think nothing ventured, nothing gained is sort of like my motto. So it has been really quite interesting. Now, if you have to think of your brand, what do you think is Connor's brand?
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm someone who's willing to do the really hard work that's necessary to get things done, but also to step back and think creatively about how we can get to a solution that people want to get to without necessarily having to go through all the hoops. Someone who's willing to grind, but also willing to step back and think about the best way to get there.
If one word that I am going to use to describe you, would you like to hear that?
Sure.
I don't know whether it's real, but I think that you're very deliberate.
Yeah.
Very detailed, very deliberate. And I know what to expect from you. Like, oh, Connor, this is not like, and you already know that like I don't really mince words these days anyway. So I think that is really important. I mean, those are the reputations. Like your detail. I know that if Connor had gone through something, I won't have to worry about it. That's a good reputation to have.
Appreciate that.
Besides that, how can aspiring lawyers demonstrate or develop interest and skill to enter into IP profession, in your opinion?
It's in the headlines quite a bit, actually. Like you don't really think about it, but there's a lot of really interesting IP issues and IP cases that come around. And so I think just sort of keeping your eye out for it and reading about it and seeing if that sounds like something that you'd like to be a part of would be a good way to figure out if it's actually something you want to do. And then in terms of like getting into the industry, I think there's a lot of ways you can do it, especially now. Like you could be an intern at a law firm. You could be an intern at a company in the IP department. You could sort of look at becoming a patent agent or a patent examiner, which doesn't require going to law school right away. And you could sort of get into the field that way and see if it is something that you want to do.
Well, that's awesome. Connor, Thank you so much for this particular special treat outside of resting station. I really enjoy this. I appreciate you getting on this, and good luck with the hearings next week.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks
So
for having me.